Assalamualaikum. How are you? Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Assalamualaikum. Who else has come from Hartlepool?
Just myself.
Just two of you?
Dr.
That's fine. And are you ready for the marriage? Everything is ready?
Yes.
Huh? When is going to be held? 4th also, isn't it?
12th and 12th here and 15th in Hartlepool.
Right, right. Inshallah. Appa is coming.
She's having some problem with visa at the moment.
Appa Musul? No, that has been solved.
Oh, right.
She's got a visa now.
Acha, acha. I didn't know that. All right.
We protested to the department here. What do you, what's your embassy doing there? So they immediately contacted them and they told her to collect the visa immediately. And what about Appa Mansoora? Is she coming?
She hasn't decided. I think she is a bit doubtful.
Shall we start with the business at hand?
Assalamualaikum, sir.
You bought this microphone? Oh, it's over there, right.
It would seem that most people in this country are intoxicated by their love for alcohol and gambling. How can we as Ahmadis counteract this malady in order that they may become intoxicated with the love of God?
Well, the best answer to that is to demonstrate in your own personal examples that you live a much better and peaceful life, having been rid of these shackles of these unfortunate evils. You live a free, emancipated life, and there's far more peace, and you can live decently at much less cost than in case of being addicted to these two things. They are in fact the largest not single but largest two factors for promotion of crime in the society. This gambling tendency itself creates a responsibility, and this alcoholism ultimately leads to drug addiction. Because alcoholism is the first base, and then after a while you get bored with that, you have to get something more and more kicking and things. So unfortunately they are going downhill in these two respects. It's high time that the politicians here went to the roots of the problem of crime and responsibility and overall decay in the British traditions. And if they do that, then they will not blame the police for not being able to cope with the crime, nor will the police be given special powers to interfere with the peace of the citizens. You see, that's another big problem which your society is facing today. In olden days, the police here used very little extra powers, and the society was secure from police. Now when the society is no longer secure from crime, it is also no longer secure from police. Because once the crime goes out of hand, then you have to give extra special powers to the police to do this, to just break into the houses of others and so on and so forth. And more often than not, their judgment is misapplied, and this power is abused. So you are going down the road of the third world country, the police of, well, maybe not third world, but via France maybe. Police already is notorious in France for these things. And the British used to have pride in this. The police was excellent, When I was here in 1955, 57, I was full of praise for the police. I don't remember any complaint during those days against police by the civilians. They always had a word of praise. If we were in difficulty, then they came, and we were in problem, and the police came, and suddenly they appeared when you needed them. And now they appear when you don't need them, So, I think this is a nutshell, the whole situation.
I think the alcohol side, having used to drink alcohol before I accepted Islam.
Oh yes, you know it from personal experience.
Yes, I wasn't an alcoholic, please believe me. But, I used to enjoy drink, but it was a form of escapism.
That's what it is. That has
Because you lost inhibitions, you do things, you say things that you wouldn't normally do when you were sober. And this is what I think.
I know, but it begins with this escapism, but then you can't escape from alcoholism itself, you know.
No.
Then you are
No,
ultimately led to
absolutely.
alcoholism in that sense.
Yes, yes.
Unfortunate. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Not so bad. My name is Ibrahim, as you know.
Yes.
My question is on
Fasting?
fasting.
Yes.
Well, I want to know, what is the significance
Yes.
behind so many different sects in Islam of different times of fasting? Like, for example, I've got friends who are Sunnis,
Yes.
and I go to their place, they're fasting and I'm not fasting. They ask me why I'm not fasting at this particular time of the year. So I just would like to know the significance of that.
Usually there's 1 month of fasting which is, which must be observed by all the Muslims of all over the world alike. So during that month there is no such difference. When they are fasting, then you are fasting. The only fractional difference appears at the two ends. When they begin the fasting month a day earlier maybe, or a day later, so the reference is then transferred to the end part as well. Because the month can be either 29 or 30th, can't be less or more. So these are the small fractional differences which appear occasionally at the two ends of the first month of fasting. But otherwise the month of fasting is compulsory for all Muslims to observe. There are other fasts which are not essential, which are not compulsory at all. They are just advised, by way of additional signs of form of worship to God, and some people do it for other reasons. For instance, according to the Holy Quran, there are certain punishments in which you have to either feed the poor or liberate a slave, etc., who are no longer available. So as an alternative, the Holy Quran tells us to have fasting for 2 months or 1 month or whatever it is. So such crimes for which one seeks pardon of Allah, or such omissions for which one seeks pardon of Allah, can also be pardoned with the help of this additional sacrifice. You see?
Okay.
So that's the only reason. Otherwise, the month of fasting is the only month which is compulsory, and the rest is just optional, and it's promoted but not essential for anybody to keep. Yes.
So, my name's Jamal. My question is, what's Islam's view on suicide, taking one's own life, and the path the soul follows?
You see, the principle of taking life is the same which applies to taking other's life or your own life. The life does not belong to you. It is created with a purpose, and it is the Creator who has the ultimate decision in this matter, whether to call somebody back to him or not to call him. So you are not the possessor of life. This principle is a very profound principle which must not be violated, because it will ultimately create disorder if you take it lightly. The life of your own children, the life of your wife, the nearest ones, they all trust with you, and you should not violate life as such. That is why the Holy Quran emphasizes the role of saying Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, taking the name of Allah before you slaughter an animal, because that reminds you that I have no right on the life of any other form of life either. It's not a question just of human life. All life is sanctified by God. except that which he himself permits you to take, or for the sake of higher purpose. So that is why you're told say Bismillah. So even a wasteful attitude towards animals is not permissible in Islam. You must have a sound reason whereby higher form of life cannot be sacrificed for low forms of life, but low forms of life can be sacrificed for the sake of higher forms of life. So suicide is just a small part in the corner in the whole scheme of things, right?
So homeopathic medicine, do you first...
You're sitting next to an allopath?
That's why I'm a little bit nervous asking. Is it necessary to first believe in it before it's going to cure you? Recently, a few weeks ago, I had an accident, but I found that paracetamol seemed to work better than arnica.
Yes.
Is it first necessary to believe in it?
Paracetamol would seem to act better in many other cases as well, but only seem, because paracetamol has no curative power over the injured parts of the body. It relieves the pain without ensuring any cure. But arnica will only work when it also cures, because whatever little effect you feel is not a direct influence of arnica over nerves. It has none. So it's not a pain relieving medicine at all. So when it improves the health or fights with the injury, only then its success is transferred in the form of you feeling better. Otherwise it has no drug effect whatsoever. See? But if arnica failed, it is quite likely that there were some other ligaments or other parts of the body which needed repair and which lay outside the influence of arnica.
I see, yes.
So it is not just a haphazard system of you taking arnica for everything. There are other things involved. If a chronic injury is revived, arnica would do nothing about it.
I see.
And maybe you need ruta or some other hypericum and things.
Yes.
So it also depends on which part of the body is hit and how deep the injury has gone. If it is around the bone tissue and the wrappings of the bone,
yes,
which are threaded with very fine nerves, arnica has no influence over there whatsoever. There's Staphysagrua, Hypericum and other such remedies which deal with nerves would be needed. So a layman's approach does not work in homeopathy, but it works. That's the advantage of paracetamol. It works with everybody, You blindly take paracetamol and forget about it. That is escapism.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yes.
Next, please. That's it. With no offense to Dr. Sir, of course. None should be taken. Right. Please, Dr. Sir.
Two verses of the Holy Quran, how do we reconcile them? One is Inna allazina qalu rabbuna Allah summa istaqamu fala khawfun alayhim wa lahum.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, that there won't be any fear on the people who say Allah is our Lord,
yes,
and are
right.
steadfast. And the verse of the Holy Quran says, "Wala nabluwannakum bishay'in min al-khawfi wal-ju'i," that we will try them with khawf. In one place, there's one place there's no khawf, and the other place they will be tried with khawf, with fear.
Both they relate to each other. Inna alladhina qalu rabbuna Allah thumma istaqamu. When the fear comes, only then is the time when some people say, Lord is our Lord, Allah is our Lord and He is sufficient. So it cannot be said without any fear. That is the trial which is mentioned in this verse. this first verse you read begins with the trial, a situation trial, because إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. Istiqama means you remain steadfast and firm and upright against all the influences to unbalance you and to throw you away. So if a tree stands upright during the storm, then you can say istiqama. It fought back all efforts to the contrary and stood its grounds. But if there is no wind, it's just calm day, you never say istiqama, you say qama, stood up. So a man can stand, and for that istiqama is not the word. You say qama, he stood up. But if there is a wind blowing against you, the factors are all try to push you around, push you down and defeat you. And then you stand up, say, Allah is our Lord, I don't care what happens. That is the trial mentioned in the second verse.
Yeah.
So the trial comes at a time of fear, sorrow and other similar things, loss. If you are steadfast, then descend angels upon you, saying that don't fear, God has listened to you and He is with you and He will remove all your worries. Right?
Yeah.
आपसे पॉइंटर है ना आज? Sorry.
As a European Ahmadi, I still find it increasingly difficult to understand why the Asian Muslims, particularly those in Pakistan, treat Ahmadis and other minority groups in such an appalling and often inhuman manner. I make particular reference to the recent death of Mr. Riyaz Khan in Shabakata.
You see, this is an attitude which is bred into them by their ignorant clergy. You know, those so-called fundamentalist mullahs, they have no knowledge of the Quran, they don't understand the philosophy of the teachings of Islam, they never refer to the conduct of the Holy Prophet ﷺ for issuing such violent edicts. Instead, they traveling in the direction of the beginning of Islam, they stand midway, and that is why they are called medieval Muslims. They share the time with us apparently, but their minds, their attitudes are all rooted in the medieval ages between Islam and now, the period when politics influenced these ulama so much so that a king could have an edict issued in his favor and Islam could utilize it as an handle. And this is, no religion is an exception to this general trend. Phases came in the history of Christianity where the same thing happened. In England, in Spain, everywhere, where religion was exploited by politics. And when this happens, then unfortunately the religious concepts are distorted permanently, because once you have the abuse of these religious powers, you can't say that we have done it exceptionally for ourselves. You have to misinterpret religion, you have to distort the teaching, and once it is distorted, then it is handed down to the future generations as such. So the violence grows upon violence. Taking their lessons from one edict of the medieval past, they say, well, we have this right, and if we have this right, we have that right as well, why not? So practically the trend is to create demigods in religion. And this is also a kind of idolatry. Idolatry is of two types. One mentioned in the Holy Quran regarding your bowing your head to others who are not gods, and the other type of idolatry mentioned in the Quran is that you bow your head to your own wishful thinking and ambitions and so on and so forth, and make it your god. So these mullahs make their own ulterior motives and the desire to be supreme and share authority, remaining outside the power, yet have something to do with authority. They have, these distorted edicts as their weapons in their hands, and they wielded these swords to scare the government in power, but only to get more licenses for themselves, so that they could rule, or they could act as if they were gods over the innocent people of Allah. Those who bow to them and their opinions, they say, this is they're excellent Muslims, Those who dare to disagree, edict issued that they are disagreed with Islam. So any disagreement with a mullah becomes a disagreement with Islam. Now this can be demonstrated very easily. There is no need for any further proofs of this, that this is exactly what happens, because in each sect there are special codes and doctrines which they follow and which makes that sect distinct from other sects. Now whenever they have power, regardless of whichever sect or followers of whichever sect disagree with them, whenever they have chance, power or political atmosphere promotive towards it, they use their power as viciously against others as they have been doing against Ahmadiyyat. So it's not Ahmadiyyat that they have singled out. It is only exploitation of distorted views of religion which they use at will. Now when those who follow them defy Islam, violate the principles of Islam, they never rise against them as long as they are behind them. They can murder, they can commit fornication or adultery or abuse the rights of others, or child abuse, or abduct children and ask for money. All that is going on under every mullah sect, under every mullah and his sect. They don't give call for a holy war against these things. That obviously shows that their loyalty is not with God at all. They are not loyal to God or godly values. They are only loyal to their own supremacy. And that is the worst type of idolatry. When you act as God, you play God, and you are so stupid and so ignorant, you have no knowledge of the world at all, and you are not decent people yourselves. So this is the creation of the worst type of idolatry. Otherwise, if you bow to a god of stone or something, statue, at least it has no power of harming you. But these idolaters who worship themselves, they have only the negative values. So this is why I call it the worst type of idolatry. We have seen just one expression of that exploding in what was the place? Shabkhadar. But it happens from here and there, and the ultimate reason is only that when they find themselves defenseless against the arguments of Ahmadiyyat, then they have recourse to this. That's in fact an admission of defeat, looking at it from another angle. Please.
I want to ask you another question briefly, if I can, please.
Yeah, please.
It's about my child.
Yes.
About academically and about
Right.
learning Arabic.
Right.
What I've been doing this last 6 months or so, I've been making my boy, which is 6 years of age, go to learn Arabic every day.
Right.
Now, somebody told me I'm pushing my boy too much.
Yes.
And I also am pushing him academically as well as that, I'm just wondering, I might push him with the Arabic and his
You
academic.
see, this is a question which is vague, and I don't know all the factors involved, so I cannot answer this question. I can only discuss in principle that in every form of education, in secular education or whatever education you call it, you have to push your children to a bit,
Yeah.
for a bit. For a while, to a certain degree. And without that the children will refuse to go to school. You have to do some pushing, but a moderate pushing which does not injure their psyche, does not destroy their self-confidence and self-respect. So that sort of pushing which goes over the edge and begins to become a havoc for the child itself, so that ultimately he grows with these psychic traumas and become distorted in his attitudes. That is wrong wherever, in whatever form it is exercised. The ideal way is to love the child and to bring him so close to you that to earn your pleasure becomes a dedication of the child. Is dedicated to earn your pleasure, and that can happen. I know this happens easily if the child knows that you love the child and you are the only source of reliance at every time of crisis. Then the child would always look up to you for finding approval in your eyes. And this is exactly what is taqwa in relation to God. If you have taqwa, then you always look up to God's pleasure, and that carves your way and sets you on the right path. So there is no need to to wait for the wrath of God to set you right. So that is why if you train your children aright in the same style as your attitude to God is defined in the Holy Quran, not that you are God to the child, but the attitude remains the same, then there is no need of any pushing whatsoever. The child would always try to please you because it will be his pleasure to remain on the right side of you. And as far as the overloading is concerned, it is just a misconcept of the people that if a child is taught more than one or two languages, he is being overloaded. The psychologists who have worked long in this field and experimented, they give us with full authority, they tell us with their full authority of experience that a child can easily be taught 6 languages simultaneously without being overloaded. And if you wait for him to grow older, the more difficult it would become for him to learn more than one language. And if you don't teach him any other language up to 12, then it will be very difficult. So if you teach him at least 2-3 languages simultaneously right from the beginning, then even when he becomes adult, he still would have the capacity and capability of learning more languages. So because you are born linguists, that sort of thing. Everybody is born alike, but some have been trained right from the early childhood to learn languages, and they acquire that special knack in the brain. The computer is attuned to that art and the work. So there is no pushing in that as far as loading with languages is concerned. There is no pushing. That's helping children. Right.
Well, Ahmadi teachings are verified in Quran and Hadith. I'm wondering what the non-Ahmadi teachings, what do they base their teachings on?
Non-Ahmadi?
Yeah, non-Ahmadi.
See, everybody claims to have based his teaching on the Holy Quran and on the tradition. There is no difference of opinion on that. But how you read it, what inferences you draw, it is there that the differences lie. And what attitudes have been bred into you by the past generations and the course of history through which these generations have gone through, they have left their marks. And some marks are left so permanently and indelibly that reading the same verses, they always draw, from our point of view, wrong conclusions. Because if your attitude is despotic, if you have no shame in appearing as a man of, given to terrorism and this and that, if you have not that sense in you, whenever a similar verse would come your way, which reminds you of this thing, without reading the context before and after, you say, no, here is my license. I can kill, I can murder, I can force anybody to change religion, and that remains a sort of potent, latent power with such Muslims. They normally do not use it, but whenever they run counter to some other movement, then these things are, brought up and raised from the dead, so to say. But they're always lying dormant in their attitudes. So when, for instance, what happened in Iran, it was not suddenly born as such. The same was the Shia religion, the same were the sources, the attitudes were the same, but they remained dormant under the Shah. And suddenly when somebody invoked those images and those views, etc., they came up and surfaced, and they were so horrible, and they had been throughout the same. So what happened in Pakistan vis-a-vis Ahmadis is happening now many times more vis-a-vis Shias, and also from Shias to Sunnis. Mass scale murders and arson and destruction of their places of worship, etc. This goes on unnoticed by the world because both sides are at fault. Both sides are fighting it out among themselves. But because Ahmadis do not hit back, they are always on the receiving end. So that is why this pronounced this fact of cruelty and crime. But they are doing the same things to each other. So it runs deep into their training of the many hundred years. But they had no root in Islam. So when we talk of Islam and the Quran, they have no debate with us on these issues. They say the only answer is that you must be murdered, you must be put to death. There is no dialogue between you and us because we know you are kafir. So no dialogue with kafir. Same thing, isn't it? But unfortunately, this is exactly what it is.
So in many countries, there's old sayings that seems to be a lot of truth in them. In this country, there's one that says that only the good die young. Does that mean that older people aren't good?
No. This is, I think, exactly the opposite. Only the good die young. Maybe it is. It indicates a certain attitude in the society. If somebody is alive, he always offers himself for criticism of the society, and with the age, he is more censured, until he is riddled with the allegations and things. Some of them may be true, some may be wrong, but he unfortunately can't die a good old man. You see, occasionally it happens. Then of course they praise. Some people die old as well, in the sense that they have earned a good name in the society and they are remembered with love. But most often, they're relegated to sort of life which people think that they're only given up to evil and there's no goodness in them. But a young man, when he dies, first of all sentimentally, he creates an emotion in everybody, even those who are not related. Oh, young man, how he died early. So that pity helps overlook his faults as well. And moreover, he has not lived far enough to offer himself for continuous criticism and amassing these faults. And again, genuinely so, if a society is evil-minded, then the age is working against people. That is the only truth in that.
Yes.
That if a society is evil-minded, the more you live, the more crime you commit, and the more opportunities of committing sin come your way. So an early death is a comparatively innocent death.
Yeah.
But that is not that somebody was good definitely and then he was called back. The death and life decisions are not made on this issue, that God calls back whoever is good and leaves behind whoever is bad. If that is the shifting of God, then the society will ultimately be rid of all goodness and only the evil will survive. It is not God's way.
Yeah.
Occasionally we read in the Quran something happening which may have promoted this, that sometimes parents are pious and holy and their child is in the beginning okay, he looks all right, but Allah knows that if he is permitted to live longer, he is going to become corrupt and become a source of torture, spiritual torture for their holy fathers, the parents. Now sometimes God has very special care for some people and he does not want them to spiritually be tortured by seeing their own progeny, going astray and running counter to God. So that is why, according to the Holy Quran, sometimes God causes a child while he is still innocent to die. But that is a rare thing.
Yes.
Only one possibility in a million maybe. But this also happens. But one possibility in a million will not go towards the building of an adage like you just told me.
One of the reasons I ask is that I thank Allah each day because one of the greatest blessings I think I receive is to wake up in the morning.
That's right.
That it gives me one more day to try and win the pleasure
That's
of Allah.
right, yes.
And that's what Islam
This is it.
to say.
So that saying is absolutely has no root as far as our human experience and religious knowledge is concerned.
Thank you.
Are you still with us? Please.
In Azur's estimation, how long before the majority of West will turn to Ahmadiyya?
Will it?
It will, yes, definitely. But
How do you know that?
how do I know? Because that's destined that's destined that Ahmadiyya will spread out all over the world.
You see,
So
the question is that reading the religious history, we find many treatments of God of earlier people. And when the Holy Quran mentions all this, because Islam is a universal religion, they particularly have a lesson and a message to us that if God treated people of Noah like that, you are not exempt. A time may come in certain parts of the world where a certain people would behave like Noah's people and will meet the same treatment. And the people of Lot, it is very clearly mentioned what happened to them. And the message is, it can happen again. If it does not happen again, then God is not just. So Islam is now, in the very claim that it is universal, has opened up all these doors to the past happenings. And these messages of the Quranic history tell us that you will not be exempt from this. So it will not happen as a totality to all the world, because Muhammad ﷺ is going to emerge victorious. But these events of history which I just referred to were not global, they were territorial in small regions. So within Islam, such things will happen here and there. So there could be a large-scale annihilation of a certain people at a certain time in a certain place because of a certain crime, and heavy punishment from God for some other crimes. Like AIDS, for instance, is a current issue of public debate. What will happen to the society if they continue to grow promiscuous, and will aid develop to a degree where it would become a visible punishment from God. You know, it will have a devastating effect. To begin with, there was a fear, and people started, you know, behaving a little bit. Then, television also, you know, took special care not to overemphasize sex and display and things. And after a while, you know, this inner urge got the upper hand, and they started treating their problem in a completely from a different angle. Not, they stopped emphasizing its immorality. On that ground, they're totally defeated. Even the Christian bishops are now coming up on television and giving a sort of their blessing to fornication and things, because they know they have lost the battle. Already the society is too rebellious against any order or discipline in this regard. So now with their ways, use condom, you know, use that, do this. Be very careful. Nobody says don't do it. You see? And they come and women display these things. You know, occasionally when I go return to my home, my bedroom at night, I put on the television just for a few minutes before I go to sleep to see what's happening in the world. I was absolutely, you know, amazed to see, astounded to see a woman teaching children, or not children, but school age or college going boys and girls, that, you know, this is how you should do it. She never said don't do it. So this will become again an instrument of large-scale destruction, because sex-related diseases are very special. They are packages of punishment, and they are only related to transgression in sex. They don't understand the message why. Other diseases have a free hand. They have no special discipline about them, that only the sinful will be punished. Even the pious do. But here the pious are treated like put aside. Don't know, you have nothing to fear. You know, that is also the meaning. Rabbana Allah. They have no fear, you know. In this regard, this verse is applicable exactly. They have nothing to fear from syphilis, from gonorrhea, from AIDS. They live a life, peaceful life, without ever having a danger of these diseases intruding upon them. But the society has already opened their doors to them. They are no longer intruders, you know. They are inmates of their own sinful prisons. So that is why a time would come, and I know from the study of traditions and from the study of Islam's prophecies, where this type of plague, as they also call it, a type of plague, is going to play a havoc with the peace of the world. Deaths would occur in large scale, like more than the known traditional plague. And why I say that? Because Hazrat Rasul Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam 1400 years ago prophesied that God, I don't remember the verse, but God had told him, word to the effect, that when a people become shameless and they begin to display sex, then God punishes them with a disease which appears with the swelling of a gland in the neck or somewhere. And that is a type of plague which would destroy them and punish them heavily. Now, who on earth could imagine 1400 years ago a situation whereby people would display sex? In the worst possible country in the world at that time, it was inconceivable. And in the society, holy society of Islam, which was being created and built, nobody could imagine that man would go that far as to publicly display sex. These are the very words. And then says the punishment would come by way of a sort of plague. See? So far, so good, because is HIV positive but not AIDS as yet. But when it activates, and it may activate during a certain environmental situation, condition, which will be imposed on man. There may be some global environmental changes within a few years, before the century I believe, which suddenly will be promotive to the spread out of the inherent viruses, and they will suddenly become activated and turn into AIDS. That is my concept based on traditions which we find mentioned by Rasulullah 1400 years ago. Imagine. Recently, Hazrat Masih comparatively recently, during the plague, said that God had informed him that a sort of plague would specially hit the Christian world, and European particularly. And I don't remember European, but Christian world especially. And it would be a sort of plague, and it will play havoc with the peace of people. Now this was said around 100 years ago, around 1900, beginning of 1900. Now when I studied the history of plague in relation to Christian history, I was surprised to find that plague visited the Christian world in those areas where Christians were persecuted, and largely hit at the Jewish or the Roman population around. And then almost exactly after 100 years it repeated itself. So if a 100 years pattern of the punishment at the hand of plague is established in relation to Christian history, because of the similarity between Masih and Jesus Christ, this could as well have happened. I mean, this may as well happen. And when you read the plague punishing the enemies of Jesus Christ earlier, then another similarity appears, and one is absolutely left without doubt that the same pattern will take place. Now, when I reached here, before that, a few years still after, there was no concept of AIDS being, or even when AIDS concept was born, nobody thought it was a type of plague. Until within 2-3 years, the specialists started talking about it as a type of plague, a sort of plague, pestilence, So then I was reminded of Mr. prophecy. A type, he used exactly the same words. A type of plague will hit, and there you are. So many lives, by millions, may be lost, because this is the design of Allah. He has divided this disease into two parts. The dormant stage may last for even 8 years, and people may not feel any signs. They may be relieved, they may feel happy and secure, okay, HIV, but no, nothing doing, And during that phase, they can freely intermix. And they are the people who spread the virus to the others in the society. So before 8 years, this would have multiplied by many times. So millions may become a billion by that time. So once it gets activated, then there is no stopping it. Right? So punishments of that sort will happen. So you can't say all of them would convert to Islam, but after some heavy punishments, global wars and catastrophes, I believe when the man's arrogance against God is smashed and is leveled to earth, then would be the time for man to accept Islam, and the West cannot accept before that time, because fortunately and unfortunately they're on the top of the world today in their advancements and achievements, etc. So they have that snobbish attitude which may not be displayed in their ordinary day-to-day life, but it is there, underlying their, all the solutions to the world problem, interrelation, with the other world countries and the other countries of the world, that in underlying snobbishness of we are superior and we have right to dictate things to the world, that is what is unfortunately standing in the way of their accepting truth and bowing their heads to a superior authority. They are the superior authority, you know. That is the same attitude as that of Pharaoh. He saw signs, yet he rejected them, because this is a very terrible complex in man. He thinks himself superior and worldly wise, powerful. Then he sees the truth and rejects it. So that is why so many people in the West talk favorably of Islam and their values, but they never dream of accepting them. See? I think it's time now for us to depart. Another function. Although we are short in this meeting by a few minutes, but many times we have taken more time, so I take leave because I have to go to this a ladies session where non-Ahmadi and non-Muslim ladies have been invited to ask me some questions. So I take leave of you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Pleasure meeting you.